And for more on the government's tax cuts plan, we're joined in the studio by our regular contributor, Paula Matthewson, political analyst at the New Daily. Paula, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Jackie Lambie, it seems, is throwing a spanner in the work for the government's tax cuts plan. How much of a setback is this?
I don't think she's thrown a spanner in it at all. It's all just part of the pantomime of Parliament. Basically, she's finally put on the table what her price is. And,
which is not unusual in politics. This is what happens, right?
Yeah. No, that's right. And I know that Matthias Cormann apparently told Pauline Hanson that he wasn't going to be doing any deals with the crossbench. Maybe just not with some members of the crossbench.
But the government had said that they weren't going to do any deals on this with any members of the crossbench in an effort to get Labor to support it.
Indeed. But I think you'll find that they will even now say that this is not a deal. This is something that stands on its own merits, and so they'll go ahead and do it. But no, it looks like it's a done deal. You know, Jackie Lambie's in this pivotal position now, and so she's going to extract everything that she can get.
Michael Sukkar was in Tasmania last month, pointing to the fact if the government waives Tasmania's debt, then everyone else will come out with their begging bowl. Is that likely to happen?
Yes, absolutely. But nobody else has the type of has
the leverage,
that Jackie Lambie's got. So, I mean, there's already people talking about her as the modern-day Brian Harradine. For those of us who are old enough to remember when Brian Harradine was in the Senate, he held the balance of power and got all sorts of goodies, mostly dollars, for Tasmania during the time that he held that balance of power position. And Lambie's now doing the same thing.
So you've got Jackie Lambie, who wants this $157 million social housing debt in Tasmania waived. You have the Centre Alliance Party, their two senators wanting the government to intervene in the gas market for their support. Is this what the new normal is going to look like in the Senate in the 46th Parliament?
Yes, it is. And I mean, it's interesting that at least this time now the government doesn't have to worry about having to negotiate with crossbenchers in both the chambers now that they have a strong majority in the House of Representatives. They only have to worry about the Senate. But this is something that's been going on for a long time, because up in the last time that the government actually had the majority in the Senate was John Howard, when he brought work choices in. So governments are used to doing this and having these negotiations with either Greens, Labor or crossbench to get their legislation through.
Labor's message has been a bit difficult on this one, isn't it? I mean, the way it went into the election, the way it's come out and saying they weren't going to be negative and they don't support the cuts, but they do support them in the lower house. They're going to be tactically strategic and go to the upper house and kind of combat it there, but they don't want to have a fight over it and make this a class war. It's really hard to work out what it is they actually stand for on this. But you can kind of see what they're trying to do. How do you think that's working out for them?
Not particularly well. Particularly if you look at Twitter at the moment, their supporters are screaming, saying, "Don't do this, don't." And you know, it's not smart to just wave it through the House of Representatives. Even though if Labor had voted against it in the House of Representatives, it still would have gone through. So, you know, this is the problem when a party has to, as you say, reinvent itself, find out what it means, what it's about, at the same time as holding a government to account and trying to put together a whole new policy platform and give all of its give the community a say as well as its MPs. So I think we're finding that Labor has listened to the fact that people didn't like the class war, they didn't like the rhetoric around the politics of envy, that, you know, there are these aspirational voters who don't want to be put in this bad light, and Labor's now having to try and attract them. So opposing the tax cuts won't be attractive to them.
Because they don't support the third phase of the tax cuts, which brings evens out the tax bracket, so essentially a tax cut for higher income earners. But Anthony Albanese yesterday, in response to the RBA dropping rates, says that the government needs to bring forward phase 2 of the tax cuts. So do you think in the wider public people actually understand exactly what Labor's position is on which part of the tax cut plan?
No, not at all. And I think that's part of Labor's concern, that, you know, Scott Morrison and the government will just simplify this this argument and saying they opposed your tax cut. They could have brought it in yesterday and they've opposed it without going into the complexities of raising the thresholds and flattening the tax and all of that. So now Labor's running scared on this, and it's fascinating to watch for political observers, but I wouldn't want to be in their shoes trying to sort it out.
Interestingly, both parties are actually saying that tax cuts need to come in sooner rather than later because the economy needs it. But everyone's very careful about talking about this in the language of an emergency. But the Reserve Bank is pointing to, hey, you guys need to actually get together and do something about this. How much are they anticipating the fate of the economy turning south?
I think the government, I know the government knows more than we do about how this is working out as Treasury crunches the numbers. And politically, the government has promised a surplus back in black. So they're going to do anything that they have to.
Anything?
I think so. I think they will do anything, and it may mean that the economy tanks. I think that's Labor's pushing them, saying you should be bringing these tax cuts forward, knowing full well that this will diminish the chances of the government delivering the surplus that it has already banked. So, you've got that political manoeuvring going on. But I can't see the government doing anything to put that surplus at risk unless they know that it's gone entirely, and then they might turn around and splash some cash out.
Okay, so you don't anticipate they will heed those calls from the RBA to use fiscal policy to help stimulate the economy?
Not unless they can find some cash to do it. If it looks that there's more income tax coming in, if they think that they can still deliver a surplus, then they might have some fiscal stimulus. I think they need to, but whether they will is another matter.
So the government argument is that the tax cuts will be enough to do the job to stimulate the economy?
Well, maybe that's...
Along with the interest rate cuts from the RBA.
Well, maybe that's the way that they'll play it. So we'll get those tax cuts out first, see how that plays, and then decide then, once they know what the numbers look like, whether, to the extent to which they can actually achieve the surplus, then they might splash the cash.
Which is maybe why we're seeing some of these analysts saying the RBA may go down to 0.5% interest rates just to support the economy if the fiscal policy is not going to do it. I want to ask you how this is going to play out in the next few days and weeks in the Senate.
In the next few days and weeks, I think the package will be passed on Thursday. I think Jackie Lambie will get what she wants, the Centre Alliance will get what they want. What I don't know is what Labor will do. If the government's already got the numbers in the Senate from the crossbench, does Labor vote for it as well? Do they vote against it? I read somewhere that they said they will wave it through, but if the government says no, we want to vote, then Labor will have to vote.
Will Labor have some success in trying to get amendments through the crossbench as well?
Possibly. Yeah, that'll be an interesting...
What sorts of things would they see?
What sort of things?
What sorts of amendments?
Well, they're looking to, as you say, bring forward that second element of the tax cuts. So, the government is at the mercy of the Senate. So it would have to, if it's changed in the Senate, then it'll have to go back again to the reps. But that may be part of the deal that they do with Lambie and with the Centre Alliance. So I guess it'll depend on who can do the best deal with the crossbench, and at the moment it's the government that's in the box seat.
Paula, it's so good to have you on the program again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.